All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of Truth of Transformation podcast. Now, today I am super stoked because we have a true one-of-a-kind. I actually have to call him a legend. There's no other way around it. But he is Nate Bailey, the one and only former Army lieutenant. He has completed SEALFIT Kokoro. We'll talk a little bit about that because it's insane. I haven't had the courage to go that far in the SEALFIT realm these days. He's ridden a bike across America. He's also completed a 100-mile race called the Kettle 100, which has led him to reading and writing, I should say, his 100-mile mindset book, which is phenomenal, all while being a husband, a father, a coach, an entrepreneur. So it's like one of those guys where you're like, he must not sleep, but he does because he's getting this stuff done. So welcome to the show, Nate Bailey.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for the intro.
Heck yeah, man. Your list could literally go on and on. I'm like, I don't have an hour to just say all the stuff you've done, but I had to hit the highlights.
Yeah.
So,
funny.
Yeah, man, like we'll get into the good stuff, but I have to like kind of know, like, what was childhood and growing up like? Because either you came out of this and was like, I'm going to make myself invincible and create this mindset, or there was something that was ingrained in you growing up. So like, where did it all kind of begin, like childhood wise, man?
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I mean, I don't know my father, like my biological father, right? And spoke to him a handful of times. I saw him once that I remember when I was in second grade, and then I didn't hear from him until like my 15th birthday, 14th or 15th birthday. He called out of the blue, out of nowhere, and I talked to him a few times then. And other than that, he's really not been in my life. Having said that, my mom has always been there. A great relationship with my mom and my stepfather, who's really been my dad. He came into my life pretty early when I was around 5, and he's always been there as well. So, but you know, other than that, typical kid, I guess you'd say, like pretty good life. We were by no means wealthy, but I was always active, right? I loved playing sports and had big goals and dreams as a kid growing up, and so I've always been driven or goal set minded as a kid. Not exactly sure where that came from, but it's just always been in me for sure. Played college athletics, joined the military. I think I really kind of joined the military to see if I had what it took. Football was done, and so that challenge was kind of gone. A lot of time on my hands, so I joined the Army National Guard. And then, of course, once I joined the Army, I didn't originally join the Army to be an officer. I enlisted first, and then once I found out that it was an option to become an officer, again, just being drawn to being a leader, went after that challenge as well and saw it as a challenge to see if I had what it took to do that. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's any one thing I'm really looking back to on, but always have been, I guess, driven to see if I had what it takes, and, you know, very interested in what we are actually capable of doing, you know, because I believe that we're really capable of doing so much more than we a lot of times believe we are.
Yeah, man, that totally makes sense. It was kind of always a little bit something a little bit more challenging in front of you that you wanted to completely test yourself on, which I absolutely love. So,
yeah.
So like, would you say that you have to have something in front of you at all times?
I kind of feel like I do personally. Because I can see times when I don't, you know, that I kind of fall back into, it's easy to drift back into this hole of, you know, not growing and kind of letting yourself slide a little bit. And so, yeah, I definitely thrive when I have something that I'm shooting for. And also it tends to usually be something kind of big and significant. And I don't know where that comes from necessarily, but yeah, so that just really keeps me focused. I see the overflow from the physical, because it tends to be a lot of physical stuff, right? Like you said, Kokoro or 100-mile runs, biking across America. I did an Ironman, just stuff like that. To really, because there's a lot of commitment and preparation and discipline that comes with something like that, to be prepared. And I just see how that overflows into all the other areas of my life too. I really have to be locked in when I'm taking on something like that.
Yeah. No, and what I love is, because from everything that you've written about in your book and everything, is you really tap into explaining that the physical isn't really a physical thing. I mean, sure it is. And it takes the preparation, it takes all the stuff. And I definitely want to get into talking about your weight loss journey to be able to do all those amazing things. But you're keen in just expressing that it's really about the mindset of what it is. It's the physical just forges the mental.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be right. Like if someone asked me, or if you would ask somebody, like, if you had to swim 5 miles in the ocean to go save your kids, otherwise they're going to die, like, could you? And a lot of people would say, yes, they can, but I don't think that they really have the capacity to go do that even as bad as they want. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do a lot of great things, but you do have to have some form of capacity there to be able to go do it. Right. If you could regularly swim a mile, you could probably go 3 or 4 to get there. Right. But if you've got a guy or a gal that hasn't put any time in the pool and hasn't swam in years or ever, just from a technical standpoint, you're not going to make it, right? Just let alone the capacity. So there is absolutely a physical piece to it, but after that, it really comes down to, this mindset of just continuing when you don't want to, continuing when it gets tough, to do the work, to do the preparation when you don't feel like it. All of that kind of together is that mindset, that 100-mile mindset that I talk about now in the book.
That makes sense. And I think what's crazy, because not many people are willing to even phrase a question like that to themselves or something. I think that's what makes you a good coach, right? Is that you're like, if you had to save your kids, I mean, that instantly like tuned me in. I mean, I'm already tuned in, right? Like I'm only here to listen to you in this hour. And like, I'm like, whoa, that turned it up another notch, right? Most people won't do that. Is that something you've learned to ask yourself throughout these things? Was that the shift of your transformation when you finally decided I got to get off the couch? Like, how did that aspect happen? And is that a question you ask yourself? That was just powerful for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've learned to ask those types of questions as a coach, right? As a coach and coaching others, and, these different experiences that we do through Man Wealth and Shield Maiden, and just coaching men and women across the country, across the world every day. You learn how to ask powerful questions, which a lot of that probably does happen from asking myself those very same questions when it's just me and the road, or me outside doing the training and things like that. And you ask yourself a lot of questions. I listen to a lot of podcasts, I read a lot of books, and I'm very intrigued to the mental piece of that. Right. So I'm always exploring that side of things.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. The mind has to drive forward for the body to follow. So when did that kind of start off for you then? I mean, it sounds like from everything I've understood that you kind of had all this success in business, and you realize like, whoa, I'm unfulfilled and my body's not where it was. You'll have to share however much weight you were at, like what your body was carrying. And then it sounds like you just like turned this gear and you were like, boom, know where I want to go. And then life just became on fire in all the other areas. Yeah,
there was a time, leading into Kokoro, you were at 20X, right?
Yeah, that's where we first met. And I was like, yeah, there was like 30 something of us, and and then our paths just kept crossing, which I thought was hilarious, because it's not like we lived in the same place. Right.
And so that was in I believe that was in like May of 2016. And I had started the journey to lose the weight, but I was nowhere near where I needed to be at that time yet. I think it was around 255 pounds still at 20X. And actually at 20X, I'm like, and so 20X, for those that probably have no idea what that is a SEALFIT event by Mark Devine. And it was a 12-hour event. Kokoro is a 52+ hour event. So 20X is kind of like, gives you a little taste of what Kokoro would be, right?
It's like a 5K in comparison to Kokoro, which is the 100-mile.
exactly.
It's nothing that's easy, but in comparison, it's not even on the map, right?
Yeah. And so, at the 20X, I was going through, again, I was 255 pounds. I wanted to get to at least 230. I started, like 275, 276, somewhere in there. And so I lost 20 pounds along the way to 20X, but I just remember, like, there's no way in hell I'm doing Kokoro. Like, what am I thinking? And again, this goes to that mindset, right? Of your mind's trying to play tricks on you in that moment. I talk about it in the book, like, never make decisions when the emotions are high, right? I say when your emotions are high, your clarity is low, and to take a step back, to give yourself some space before you really make a decision on what you're going to do moving forward in the future. But the journey, I guess you'd say, like, I remember bending over to tie my shoes and being out of breath. And that's just like that's a moment that sticks with me, of like, never experienced that before. And it's just kind of like, here's your sign that you are definitely out of weight and over shape, because we always keep this lens of ourselves of still being fit and, like I was in college. And yet, even when you see yourself in the mirror every day, you still don't see yourself quite in the reflection of what you really truly are. And so that moment when I bend over to tie my shoes and I'm out of breath, like cutting the airways off by bending over to tie my shoes, is like, dude, and I got 3 kids and I'm married, and I want to be there for my kids. And it's like, what kind of an example am I really setting for them by showing up this way? And my kids remember, and they never really said it then, but they mention it now that I've lost the weight. They're like, yeah, Dad, you were kind of bigger, and they have made those comments, and it's true. And it's like just this powerful testimony to, like, your kids really are watching you more than, and they're not always going to say anything, but they're watching you and the example that you set for them. And so,
that's interesting. Like, you're saying they're watching and may not say something.
Yeah.
Yet the parents, we're saying something, but we're not really the ones watching. So it's that
we're saying things all the time, but they're really watching what you do more than what you say, because
does the video match the audio?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a good reminder for myself too, because there are times when as a parent, right, I'll say a lot of things and maybe not align with those. So I always try and check myself as much as I can on that. So that's really where that journey started. And Kokoro was a big catalyst for me, because it was really the first time in I would say at least a long time, where I really took an inventory of where I was at, and I followed through to get to where I needed to be to actually be successful, right? And I lost, over 45 pounds to get ready for Kokoro in a fairly short amount of time, about 5 months, from when I decided that I was going to do this. And there was a lot of the physical piece, right? Not only the weight that had to be lost, but, like, you go to Kokoro and there's standards that you have to meet. You have to do the Murph, which is a CrossFit workout, crazy CrossFit workout. And you do all that, like, not while you're fresh, but they kind of beat you down for quite a ways before you get to do it too.
Of course.
And so, so really from that was really the time about 2.5 years ago that really has kickstarted me on this journey to where I am continually moving today.
Oh, that's awesome. I think what I love is, like, you're saying, use these external motivational goals, these big things, whether it's a physical event of some nature, to then allow you to do the work to live up to that, more than anything. Because we know it's an internal job, for the weight loss to stick, it's about who you become. And you share a lot about that and all the stuff you teach, and including the book. But you're saying it's okay to, like, use these external things to add fuel to the fire to get us motivated in order to do something. I think that's where it can be this kind of missing ship. Either people just get excited about the external thing, or they just try and do the internal work. And it's really the combination of the two. And you talk a lot about it in your book, where you're talking about, it's like where you shift your self-worth, worth from that you're now being the man that actually finishes. And it's more like a living up to your word. So is that something that just happens as you're going through that journey, or is that something that can be taught? Like, what can you speak to on that for listeners?
I definitely think it's something that can be taught, right? But there's got to be something that drives it, right? I mean, it's kind of like the drug addict or the alcoholic, right? I mean, until they really want it, you can't want it more for them than they do themselves, right? You know, for them to go through rehab, like if it's forced upon them, it's probably not going to happen. Like all the tools and the skill sets and everything that they need to succeed is in place, but they really have to want it. And so it really starts there. Like what drives you? What do you want? Why does it matter? And again, you know, I go back to, I alluded to it a little bit about my kids and just being the example for my children, because like the realization that if I don't, someone will, right? And it's more than likely someone that I'm really not going to be okay with. Could be the boyfriend in high school or the wrong crowd that, like, you know, that leads them down a path that I wouldn't want for them. And I'm not saying that you can put a bubble around your kids and you can protect them from everything in life, but at the same time, like I can control what I can control. And I know for a fact that they look up to their father, especially daughters. And so I can control the example that I am for them, like how I set. And so to go after big things, and not just to go after big things, but really to show them like the work that is required to actually do it, like the process, the journey. And yeah, I mean, the mindset, yeah, there's absolutely, as a coach, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can do to help show the way and the roadmap, if you will, as far as, you know, how to get there and to be consistent, intentional every day, and to push through and to realize that you really can do more than you think you can. But at the same time, like, what's driving it, right? That has to come from you. That has to come from each individual, as far as like, what is your why? What's that holy cause that you have that's going to drive you to do the work?
It's beautiful. I love the piece about your kids. Just speaking to the fact that, you know, if I don't, someone else will. And I mean, that from hearing what you're talking about at the beginning, like with your relationship, you know, or lack thereof with your dad. And so it's amazing how we want to be the leaders because of how we were shaped from our past. And so it's clear to me that, man, you're trying to change a whole generation, starting with your kids and starting with the people you coach.
Yeah, you know, that's I hadn't really connected those two until really recently. I think we have this tendency as people to really kind of discredit our story, discredit our what has happened to us in our life and how that's maybe helped shape and mold us. Because I really have discredited the fact that my actual dad has never been around. I really don't think of him that often. I have more lately, just because I think maybe my kids are kind of like, they ask questions every now and then, like, you know, because they can't wrap their head around like their dad not being a part of their life, right? But yeah, I've made that connection recently of, you know, there might be a lot more to the fact that my dad was not there at all, and I guess in a way, you know, he did set an example for me by not being there, right? And how that, maybe that's why that is so important to me, is that, right? Like, I don't want to do that for my kids. And so that was just kind of a powerful realization. And you alluded to it there, that I had probably a few months ago. I actually just kind of made those connections. It may seem obvious to other people, but I guess it wasn't really to me.
That's always how it is. Anytime I've had a realization, people are like, wait, you didn't recognize that?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, right.
No, I'm in my own story, man. Like,
yeah.
No, I think that's really, really cool, really powerful stuff. And in a weird way, right, I'm going to say thank you to your dad, because obviously it meant that you did all these cool things. I met you and get to be inspired by it. So it's,
that's right.
Connecting the dots backwards in life. So that's a good thing. So, you know, you talked about, and one of the lines, and I'm just going to read it here because I loved it, said, like, if you realized how short this life is, you would not spend valuable time in other people's minds. You know, like, so many people will talk and share some powerful stuff on, like, life is short, take action, do things, and focus on the creation of things or going after things. And I think those are extremely powerful, and we all recognize them. We sometimes forget and get completely off track and need that slap. but you're taking it a much step further. Because I mean, for you, everything is shaped on mindset, and ultimately that's our guide. And you're saying, you know, we can't spend our valuable time, like the only thing we have, our only commodity, in other people's minds. So love for you to dive into that, because I think so often on this weight loss journey for so many people, or as they're trying to just get up off the couch and do something physical so that they can be with their kids, there's all these voices, and it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know, too often the work that's required to lose the weight or whatever it is doesn't happen because of, you know, we're worried about what someone else is going to say, what they're going to think, how this might look to others if you do this. Like, I find myself falling in those traps sometimes. It could be as simple as like asking the person at the restaurant if you could sit at the booth instead of the table, right? You're afraid to, because I don't know, some stupid story about what you think they might think about you for doing that, right? So that's a very simple example of that. But yeah, you know, I lived, I think, a long time just not willing to share my story, not willing to do this or that because of what you think other people might think, right? Being in there, stuck in their heads. And the reality is number one, like, they're not worried about you. They got enough to worry about their life. And they're busy enough just trying to figure out and navigate through their own lives, let alone have to worry about what somebody else is doing. And that's what I've seen. Like, if I've ever been afraid to share something, a story on Facebook because of that, but yet I do it anyways, the response is never what I thought it was, right? You know, you create the story that thinks that people are going to laugh at you, or they're going to you know, post negative comments, but it's always almost 100% of the time been just super positive. And it's refreshing when people are willing to share themselves and be vulnerable, I guess you would. And so, yeah, stay out of other people's heads, because there's a hard enough battle just in our own heads a lot of time, right? With that voice telling us that it's okay to sleep in, it's okay not to do this, and to justify, you know, it's like the monkey brain, they say, right? Trying to keep us safe and comfortable.
Yeah. No, the justification is huge. And you kind of talk about like the inner dialogue is what either makes us or breaks us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do to overcome that voice? Just because you talked about it, when the alarm clock goes off and all you want to do is hit snooze, what do you do? What are the tactics? How do you,
so I you know, I don't know. I've created this for myself just to become the person that does what they say they will, or like this, the power of being your word. You know, I talk about your integrity bank, right? So we all have an integrity bank, just like we have a bank account for our finances. We have one, in the way that you grow this balance or credit in your integrity bank is by doing every single day what you said you would. You know, starting at Kokoro, right? Really, for the first time, like I said, getting to the point where I literally did, like, it was a big accomplishment to go from 275 pounds down to 230, to be prepared physically to be able to get there, and then to actually just continue to do what's required and stay in it and actually complete it. Like, there was 28 of us that showed up that day and only 9 of us that finished. And so, you know, a big accomplishment. And so a lot of deposits were made into my integrity bank along the way. And that happened by me being my word, by doing what I said I would. And the more that you do that, the easier it is to get up in the morning. Now, there's still going to be times when you're not going to want to get up, and you might, because you're tired or you're sore or whatever. But again, it's just like, once you become a person of your word, it's really hard to break it, right? And there will be days when you have to take deposits or withdrawals from your integrity bank as well. And so that's the importance of it. You want to build up that balance so that you have something in the bank to be able to make the withdrawal, so that you're not insufficient. Because there's a lot of time in my life where I was writing checks that I couldn't cash, right? I was bouncing checks left and right inside of, being my word and doing exactly what I said I would. And so, yeah, that's, it's just so powerful. That's what has helped me the most. And then, putting yourself out there, doing whatever you have to do because there are going to be more days when you don't want to, right? And we all know this and we experience it. And when you get those wins along the way, it helps as well, right? It's, setting big goals, doing the work, and then actually going out and accomplishing it. And, it's just, I don't think there's ever that one thing, right? It's kind of this accumulation of, making deposits in the integrity bank, doing what you said you would, being clear on what it is that you want, why it matters, not being in other people's heads. And there's failures along the way. There's, it hasn't been just this smooth path the whole entire time. There have been days when I didn't do what I said I would, but there's been way less of those. And I talk about that in the book, right? The goal is really to make those instances fewer and further between, right?
Yeah. And that, I kind of skipped over that, but you had several attempts at like the 100-mile race before completing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I failed twice.
Yeah.
I failed twice. Failed at the Kettle 100.
Maybe I hyped you up too much. I should have talked about that, right? Because that's part about becoming who you
it's
become.
a huge part of it. And I thank God I did, right? it would have been nice to finish it on the first time, but at the same time, the journey has been so much better because of it. There probably wouldn't have been a book. And I would have missed out on a lot of other experiences as well. But it's also like I've learned a lot through the failures, right? People look at failure as this really negative word, but there's nothing wrong with failing, especially if you can own it and share it, because all of us fail. And like, no one resonates with the guy that just wins all the time. It's kind of like, I hate to say this because it almost feels like it's blasphemy, right? But David Goggins is a guy that, you kind of look at and has he failed? Yeah, absolutely. Has he had a lot of adversity? Absolutely. And how he grew up and all that. But at the same time, like, because he is who he is, it's almost like this superhuman guy that like, his first 100-mile run, he crushed it and, should have probably ended up in the ER. But
I was going to say he crushed bones too, though. So.
Yeah, he's crushed a lot of things. It's almost really, and he's super inspirational, and I love the guy. I do. But at the same time, it can be hard for some to relate with that because 100%. You just cannot see yourself being that guy.
Yeah.
And then there's someone like me that's just like, well, you can go run 100 miles. And I didn't do it in my first attempt. I did it in my third, but I did it. Like, I wasn't going to stop. I ran 64 miles the first time, and it could have been very easy for me to say, hey, that's still good. That's still further than just about anyone else has ever done. And I had a lot of people say that, hey, it's all right. Be proud. It's all good. But again, a big part of being your word is it doesn't mean that you're successful every time. It just means you're actually going to commit to accomplishing what you said you would. And for me, I said I was going to run 100 miles. And so if it took me 5 attempts, that's what it was going to take. And that's what I was going to do. And luckily it didn't. Luckily it took 3. So
I think it's that surrender to it, though, that it's like, you know that the outcome is going to come when it comes, probably gave you more fuel to finish on that third one than if you had been set on the only way you were going to feel successful and happy was to finish. You had surrendered to the fact that it's going to take however many times it's going to do, and I'm going to be okay with that part of the process, part of the journey. So that's probably what gave you even more fuel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really cool. So I think for a lot of people, they'll set goals, and from what I've seen, even statistically, like they'll achieve them. Like 85% of people will lose a substantial amount of weight in their life, usually at least 20 pounds. This is across America, 20 to 40 pounds at some point in time in their life. But 95% of those people put all of that weight back on in less than 2 years. So there's only 5%, guys like you, that make the 5% that keep it off and make it a true lifestyle change. And we see this so often with like running a marathon. People will set a goal to run a marathon. They'll train really hard, 12, 16 weeks. They'll accomplish it. And then boom, right back on the couch. And I think it's that after where it separates, kind of the normal. Like we all say we want to be normal, but we really don't, because the normal goes back and regresses, and the abnormal, the people that keep going and keep developing and keep growing. Like, what is it after that, 20X, then after that, 50K, then after that? Like, was it just setting the next thing? Because it's kind of, you hit this valley after this peak. How do you keep going, or what needs to happen so that people don't lose the weight, hit the goal, and go, well, I'm done. I ran my race. Well, I'm done. I think that's something that you figured out.
Yeah, I think I probably figured that out through trial and error, or maybe experiencing some of that myself too, right? Like where you do see some of that success, and then you end up, and then it's like there's nothing left, or it's the big accomplishment. Again, I think that can be for a lot of people, it's losing the weight and then taking the foot off the gas pedal and feeling like, and you should celebrate, right? You should celebrate those wins.
100%.
And it's okay to like maybe take your foot off for a little bit, but at the same time, you have to, you can't do that for an extended period of time, or you will just go back to where you were, or maybe even worse. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of the reason why it's always so important to me to have the next thing. For me, again, I like to have something that I'm signed up for, that I have to work for, versus just maintaining, right? With nothing really out in the future as far as something to train for, like a date set. So that's why, setting goals, outcomes, time frames. We like to live inside of a season or 12 weeks at a time, and just very outcome based, because I know what the possibility is, and how I can keep on track that way. And I know what's going to happen if I don't. I'm going to regress. I'm going to go backwards. And I've seen that inside of my life. And so, yeah, that's how I've been able to do it, is just not settling, and just continually wanting to grow and get better because of what you just said, right? We're either growing or we're dying. That's kind of how I look at it. We're either growing. There's no real such thing as just staying the same. Like if you stop watering the plant, it wilts and dies. It doesn't just stay the same. And so that's kind of how I look at myself and my life, in really all areas, right? Not just physically, but if you don't water your relationships with your wife and your kids, it's not gonna just stay status quo. It's gonna regress. It's gonna get worse. And so you have to continue to be intentional. And sometimes, it depends on how you look at it, right? Some people can be like, oh, I always have to grow. Like that can sound exhausting. It's like how you look at it, right? It's this perspective that you can have.
Yeah. No, and I think for a lot of people, they think, well, no, my weight is staying the same. But that's what you're seeing from one metric on the scale. That's not what's happening internally if you're not doing these different things.
Yeah.
So
or even, right. Muscularly or whatever.
Yeah. Even cellularly, so it's
right.
It's making an impact even when we don't see it. And I think that's key. And so you're right. We can't take the foot off the gas for a little bit. We definitely want to celebrate and appreciate, so that we can enjoy our accomplishments. It's not just about not being enough by any means, but it's about celebrating the growth to allow ourselves to give more.
Yeah, that's crucial, really. Yeah.
The last thing you were kind of talking about in the book that I thought was really, really cool is just like how choosing a positive mindset before you do anything, so you don't fall into old behaviors. So it was almost like it wasn't the action of signing up that was leading it. It was choosing this positive mindset before you even go out and doing it, so that when you do decide to sign up, it sounded like you were saying, so it's not like I have to go do this, but it's like I get to go do this. And I thought that was a unique twist, because usually we're using all right, I got to get off the couch, let me sign up for a 5K. And you're saying like, nope, I'm going to have this positive mindset. So it's like, I'm going to get to do this. And I think that's really, really unique and powerful. I took a lot away from that, and just love to expand on that piece as well.
Yeah. So, it's just really, again, it's just this way of being and living, right? It's of, the person that's being their word, and just what's available to us and the experiences that we have through this mindset of just continually staying in top form. Like, I see a lot where, and hopefully this is answering your question, but I see I see a fair amount of people posting online about how there's no such thing as life balance, right? And whereas meaning like you just, to me, it's like justifying, that I'm going to go work 80 hours a week and crush it financially. And then that's going to take care of all the other areas of my life. Right. Well, again, if you're not being intentional in one area or another, it's going to regress. And when you are so unbalanced, and I don't look as life balance being like you have to spend the equal amount of time in each area of your life. That is unrealistic. But at the same time, you can be very intentional and present in all areas with the time that you do have in those. And so again, it's just, by doing that, by living that way, like when the opportunities do come up, it's you're ready for it, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's the 100-mile, whether it's, the 5-star relationship in your marriage or with your kids, when you're consistently taking an advantage of today, right? And I talk a lot about every single day, right? Showing up every single day, just one day at a time, be present. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about what's happened in the past, but to stay present. You really do have this outlook of, man, like, I don't have to go run 100 miles. I choose to, and I get to go run 100 miles or whatever that is. It's because, and even like the anxiety that I would have with those events in the past, I don't have anymore, probably because of the same thing. Like when the 100-mile race is coming up, like I used to be the week or two before, I would be consumed with it. Fear, anxiety would come up, which doesn't serve me. And it probably, if anything, really takes away from my preparation, takes away from the time that I have leading into that with my family, and just negatively affects all areas of my life, to where now I just know, hey, I'm prepared. I know what it's going to take. I know what it's required, and what an opportunity that I get to do to go and experience this, to meet these people, to be in this place, and just look at it from a total different perspective and mindset. Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
So to a lot of people, you're kind of like the David Goggins to them.
I'm like the average Joe David Goggins.
I don't know many average Joes that run 100 miles and do right. But yeah, so for someone who's kind of going, like I can't keep up with this guy or even get anywhere close to that, which, like you're saying, is not true, and that's the beautiful thing. But for someone who's just kind of starting out, and maybe they're where you were when you were sitting at that 275 and you were looking to just start making a shift and a change, what do you feel are like the first few critical steps for them to follow?
Well, for me, it was taking a stand for what I really wanted in life finally, right? And then, surrounding myself with people that could help me. For me personally, I hired a coach, right? I hired AJ Roberts' wife, Jenny, to help me with my nutrition. So you don't have to do that, but there's plenty of resources out there to help you, especially today with the internet and everything else that we got going on. There's no reason you can't get some help for the things that you don't know, so that you can get there a little faster. And so I would surround myself with, the experts or the coaches. As a coach myself, I have coaches. And also it's just people that will support you along the way too, right? Be very careful in who you share your goals, dreams, and aspirations with, right? You share those that with the people that have your best intentions in hand, and that's usually a pretty small circle for most people, right?
It is.
And and so be very careful in that team that you surround yourself with, and then create this plan and go to work and do it and show up. And when you have the day where you don't beat yourself up, right? Because those days are going to happen. And usually that's what happens. You beat yourself up, and then all of a sudden, like, it's just out the window. So be committed, know why you're doing it as well. Again, number one, holy cause, what's really driving you, and then remind yourself of that every day. And don't take it so seriously, meaning, like, it's all right every now and then if you have a piece of cake on your daughter's birthday, as long as you don't have a piece of cake every day after that. Have some fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably the only piece we didn't talk about that you're so adamant about is like having fun along the journey. Cause there's no
Yeah.
way that prepping for 100 miles was fun and running 100 miles was fun, but you were great about sharing like the moments that were fun within it. You pretty much created and found those moments, I think, more than they
Yeah.
found you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. More than likely. And I mean, I think, again, just doing this enough and failing a few times along the way, you learn, right? Like, it's not that serious. If you don't, like, it's okay. You can go do another one. Because there's been times where I've maybe failed and I've just totally let it crush me. Like it was everything that mattered in the world. And that's when I do like just go the opposite direction and fall into that dark hole versus being like, find the wins in that. Even though it was a failure, I still ran 64 miles, right? I still ran 75, almost 76 miles the second time. Like those are definite significant wins and growth along the way, even though it wasn't, what I said I would do. So you got to find the wins in everything.
yeah,
and
man.
the lessons.
Yeah. I think the lessons are key. You've nailed that throughout this whole thing too. Is just lesson after lesson through your life story, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I got to know, I mean, I know you attempted a 200 mile, which was just like, baffles my mind because you're like, well, 100 wasn't enough. Let me not just do 101 miles or 125. Let me straight up double an insane number. So, and there were some challenges along that path, but other than that, like what's driving you right now? Where are you going with some stuff physically, mentally? What are you up to?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah, I had the 200 and it just turned into, it's like, it never plays out how you would hope that it would, right? And so it rained for like 10 hours, before and during that race, and it was a trail race, and it's all up and down on this river bottom, and so if you can imagine, kind of slippery,
Yeah,
and difficult. And it was a 10-mile loop, and I started to fall like I had probably done 100 times before that, and tried catching myself and tweaked my knee, and I was out. And again, I could have let it ruin me, like I probably would have at some point, but just realizing that it's, the world is still going to go on, whether or not I finish 200 miles or not. And so I'm looking at another one just because, again, I'm kind of in that mentality of, I said I was going to do it. So I would at least like to attempt it again and not maybe necessarily that same race, but another one here in the end of August that I have my sights on. But again, it's just to give me something to continually train for and push.
yeah, it's beautiful. I kind of want to like come up with something insane and be like, yeah, just to get you to agree, since you follow your word so well. I want to get you to agree on the show, like publicly, that you're going to run 1,000 straight miles. It's like, just because I know you'll freaking find a way to do it, but I won't. So
thank you.
yeah, because you probably would. That's cool, man.
Yeah, and that's the other piece to that is like, just because it's 100 miles for me doesn't mean it has, like, most people in their right mind aren't going to, like, and you probably shouldn't, but at the same, unless you want to, right? So just because that's what I do doesn't mean it can't be, like, it could be a 5K for somebody. It could be, I mean, I remember not that long ago when 2 miles was a lot for me, and it wasn't that long ago. It was just a few, really, just prior to Kokoro, about 2.5 years ago, where 2-3 mile runs were. Now my perspective is so different because I've ran 100 that, like, it's 2 miles is just not even getting started. But
yeah, no, I can totally relate. I remember when a 2 mile hike felt like a lot, and then a 10-mile hike felt like a lot, and then a 10,000 foot peak, and then Mount Rainier felt like a lot. And now I'm like, well, I've done all those, so I guess Denali is coming up next.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, exactly. See, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep. But then I think you're right. It's like having the why behind it. And I've got a powerful why, so I can completely relate to that. And having the right coaching and the right training. So it's all those pieces and the right people. Because like you mentioned, man, like when I told people I was doing Rainier for the first time, all of a sudden people are just bombarding me with like, like the death stats and all this kind of stuff. And you're going, why in the world would you share like the people who die? Like, how is that helping me? Like, that's
where it goes to what I was talking about. Like, be careful who you share it with, right? Because, and I don't think it's ill-intended. Like,
it's their fears, right? Projected on us.
Yeah. They're afraid to do it themselves, and they can't. And so they're like trying to, they're trying to to keep you safe, I guess you would, right? They're like,
yeah,
you know, they're just trying to help you out, I guess, in a way, but really it doesn't. So, you know, yeah, be careful who you share, what your dreams are and what your goals and aspirations are.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. So before I ask my last question, where can people find the latest book, 100 Mile Mindset? Where can they find you for more information, follow you, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so the book, 100milemindset.com. It's 100milemindset.com for the book. You can find me on my website, NateBaileySpeaks.com. Coach Nate Bailey on Instagram. Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate it, man. So last question, and it's probably going to be a sum because you've nailed so many pieces here and just knowing you, but what do you believe it takes to, like, what is the truth that it takes to completely transform?
Yeah, it is a summary, I think, of what I've already said, really, of, you know, really make sure and get clear on what it is and why you want it, right? That why. And then it really all boils down to just being your word, like making those deposits every day into your integrity bank, which just means showing up every day and doing the work and not getting consumed with the end result, but just staying focused on what's in front of you, right? Because no reason getting overwhelmed with all the work that's ahead of you, and just focus on what's in front of you today.
Beautiful. Well, Nate, thank you so much for coming on the show, dropping wisdom. Everyone head on over to 100milemindset.com, grab the book for sure, and be for sure to give him a follow on Instagram and all that kind of good stuff. So you guys heard it here. We'll keep you appointed so that you guys can follow his 1,000-mile run. All right. Appreciate it, Nate. Appreciate it. We won't make him run 1,000 miles.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
All right, my friend, that concludes another great episode. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for going on this journey with me, going down this path as you and I continue to explore and uncover the truth of what it takes to completely transform. And now you've got two assignments. And the first one is it's really important that you take action on one thing that you heard from today's message. It's important to take the education with a little bit of implementation so that you can yield the results to go from good to great, to go from ordinary to extraordinary, to go from your everyday norm to a place where you can completely transform. And the second thing that I need you to do is share this message, because there's a friend, a coworker, a loved one out there that needs to hear a piece of this. And it's what they are waiting for to help them radically shift the way that they've been living life and start to explore their true potential, for them to get unstuck. And so I need you to screenshot this, tag me on social media, or share or write a review or whatever it is you know is going to get this message out to the right person at the right time so that they can live the best life possible. Because that's our goal. That is our goal. You and me, to be able to share the best messages that we possibly can and impact a great number of lives. So as always, I appreciate you. Coach Joseph Hawthorne, Truth of Transformation. Peace be the journey.